He had it all: money, power, and fame. She had nothing but dreams and courage. Two worlds that should never have crossed. But that night, an unlikely contract brought them side by side. He only wanted someone to make an impression. She accepted out of necessity. Yet when she spoke at dinner, her simple words touched a heart he believed had long turned to stone. That was the beginning of an unexpected story, where what seemed like a cold arrangement slowly became a romance capable of changing destinies. The wide windows of his Manhattan penthouse reflected the city that never sleeps. Logan Blackwood stared down at the glowing skyscrapers, but there was no light in his eyes. Silence filled the air, broken only by the faint hum of traffic below. The glass of whiskey in his hand trembled slightly, mirroring the loneliness consuming him. Deep down, power and wealth brought no warmth, only cold walls that pressed in closer with each passing day. He was the most feared and respected man in tech, the CEO of Neurocore Innovations, his name stamped across magazines and international headlines. But his heart had been in ruins ever since his last heartbreak. Never again, he whispered to himself, as if it were a vow. The memories of the past were scars he hid behind expensive suits and endless meetings. The magnate who seemed to have everything actually had nothing at all. Logan paced through the vast living room, every object radiating luxury yet lifelessness. Abstract paintings hung on the walls, but none breathed warmth. He ran his fingers across the marble table, as if searching for something invisible, something to fill the void. In the half-light, his shadow stretched large against the wall, powerful yet solitary. The silence screamed, and the emptiness was heavier than any fortune. Even a stranger could feel the crushing weight of his isolation. In a moment of weakness, he hurled the glass against the cold fireplace. The sound of shattering echoed through the room, like a muffled scream. They think they know Logan Blackwood, but they know nothing. His low voice dissolved into the emptiness, a confession whispered only to the walls. The man who commanded artificial intelligence couldn't control his own pain, and that contradiction made him even more mysterious. But deep within his tired eyes, something lingered, a faint spark that refused to die out, as if, despite everything, there was still room for a new beginning. Logan didn't know it yet, but that lonely night was only the start of a story that would change his life forever. And in the shadows of that penthouse, destiny was already moving its pieces. The small room smelled of dust and hope. Logan once shared a thin mattress with his siblings, while rainwater dripped from the ceiling on cold nights. The kitchen table, worn by time, rarely held enough food. His mother smiled even through hardship, but Logan's gaze already carried the weight of someone who dreamed of more. He scribbled on broken radio parts as if they were treasures, convinced that within them lay his way out. The neighbors whispered about that strange boy who spent his days taking apart fans and old televisions. Does he really think he can change the world with scrap metal? They mocked. Logan stayed quiet, his eyes steady as he held tangled wires in his hands. One day, show you all, he murmured, clenching his fists. Every laugh at his expense only fueled the determination burning inside his chest. At 14, he built his first makeshift robot from tin cans and discarded circuits. The machine barely moved, but his eyes lit up brighter than ever before. His mother watched with tears she tried to hide. "You were born for something great, Logan." Those words became a mantra, echoing in his mind every time he thought about giving up. Between hunger and sleepless nights, his dream refused to die. Time passed, and the impossible happened. A full scholarship to MIT. The moment he stepped on campus, Logan felt as though he had entered another universe. Towering buildings, labs filled with light, brilliant minds everywhere. Yet he, the boy from the outskirts, stood out as an undeniable genius. The jeers of the past still echoed like ghosts, but now they were drowned out by applause and recognition. And it was there, between books and machines, that he experienced his first taste of love. A young classmate who seemed to see more than just his intelligence. But when he dared to open his heart, rejection struck him with brutal force. "You'll never be enough for me." Those words, cold and sharp, cut him like a blade. From that moment, Logan swore he would prove to the world and to himself that his worth would never again be questioned. The clock ticked into endless nights as Logan worked in a cramped garage. The air smelled of oil, metal, and cold coffee. Wires scattered across the floor, improvised circuit boards, and screens glowing blue made up his secret world. He had no luxury, only determination. Every line of code typed was a silent cry against the humiliation of his past. With every bug fixed, his dream took shape. Before that, he had turned down a tempting offer from one of the biggest tech companies in the world. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," the executive said, laughing at his defiance. But Logan didn't flinch. "I'd rather fail on my own than live trapped in someone else's success." With those firm words, he walked out of the boardroom under stunned gazes. That choice wasn't just rebellion, it was freedom. The first months were brutal. Overdue bills, sleepless nights, and heavy doubts about the future. Still, he pressed on. An old computer served as his server, and his friends called him crazy. Yet, in the middle of the chaos, the first version of his creation was born, an artificial intelligence system capable of learning on its own. "This will change everything," he whispered, his hands trembling before the glowing screen. Slowly, curious investors began to show up. Some mocked, others tested. But once they saw the results, disbelief gave way to silent respect. The tiny garage soon turned into an office. The name he chose, MILLIONAIRE Innovations, now stood on a simple plaque at the door, a symbol of a future he could hardly imagine. The empire had begun, but the price was steep. Logan no longer knew the difference between day and night. The phone rang endlessly, his schedule overflowed with meetings, and his personal life vanished in a sea of reports. Friends drifted away, relationships no longer existed. He had earned respect, but had also chained himself to his own ambition. Deep down, the emptiness remained greater than ever before. The Manhattan penthouse was spacious, luxurious, and silent. The windows reflected the vibrant city outside, but inside there were only echoes of loneliness. The furniture was expensive, modern, yet devoid of warmth. Logan wandered through the marble corridors like a ghost in his own home. The silence was so heavy that even the sound of his footsteps felt like a cruel reminder that nothing ever changed. The only constant presence was Grace, his housekeeper, a discreet, middle-aged woman who had been with him since the earliest days of MILLIONAIRE. She knew his habits, his silences, even his hidden wounds. "You should eat better, sir," she said softly, placing a tray on the table. Logan only nodded, never lifting his eyes. Lost in reports and memories he preferred not to revisit. Entire shelves were filled with old books, and it was within them that Logan sought refuge. He would spend hours reading, as if the words could build walls between him and the world. Sometimes, Grace watched him in silence, her expression a blend of compassion and concern. She knew that behind his coldness was a man still bleeding inside, but she never dared to break the barriers he himself had built. Time seemed frozen. Nights blended into mornings, no laughter, no voices, only the distant hum of the city. Logan avoided parties, interviews, any human contact beyond what was absolutely necessary. "I don't need anyone," he repeated, as if trying to convince himself. But his voice was always too low, more like a confession than a statement. Yet behind every cold gesture, something betrayed him. The lingering glance at couples in the street. The silent ache in his chest when he saw Grace leave for home. The man who had built machines that spoke and learned could not find a way to fill the emptiness of his own heart, and without realizing it, destiny was already preparing an encounter that would shatter his isolation. The invitation arrived in an elegant envelope, embossed with golden letters. Logan opened it without much interest, but his brow furrowed when he saw the sender's name, Charles Mendoza, one of Europe's most influential investors. The paper radiated power, every word carefully chosen. "Exclusive dinner. Bringing a companion is required." Logan let out a heavy sigh, tasting the irony of fate. The next evening, seated in his office, He turned the invitation over in his hands. A significant other, he murmured with a cynical smile. There was no one in his life who could fill that role. When Grace brought in his coffee, she noticed his expression. "Are you going to decline?" she asked in a neutral tone. Logan looked away. "I can't. But I can't go alone either." The silence between them was answer enough. Charles Mendoza was more than just an investor. He was a man who set trends, moved markets, and ruined reputations. To be at his table was a rare opportunity, but showing up without a companion would be seen as weakness. Logan knew it. The pressure was suffocating. He spent the night staring at the ceiling of his penthouse, searching for a way out. "I need someone. But who?" he muttered at dawn, staring into the mirror. The reflection showed a powerful man, yet lost in something money could never buy. The ticking clock felt like a cruel reminder. The dinner was coming, and with every second, the urgency grew heavier. That was when a dangerous idea formed, a choice far from the norm, one that could either end in disaster or salvation. Logan drew in a deep breath, his gaze steady. "If I don't have someone, I'll find one." Without realizing it, he had just taken the first step toward the encounter that would change his life forever. The cafe buzzed with movement that rainy afternoon. Cups clinked, voices overlapped, and the aroma of fresh coffee filled the air. Logan walked in briskly, dressed in his usual dark suit, hiding behind the coldness he wore like armor. But his eyes landed on a young woman in an apron, smiling even amid the chaos of orders. There was something different about her. Olivia Harper wiped down a table in a hurry, her hair tied back loosely, a few strands framing her face. Her movements were quick, but her expression radiated calm. When she noticed Logan's fixed gaze, she frowned. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, clutching the tray against her chest. He remained silent for a few seconds before giving an unexpected reply. "I need to talk to you." Seated in a quiet corner, Logan didn't waste time. "I want you to come with me to a dinner, not as a waitress, but as my girlfriend." Olivia almost dropped her glass. "Are you kidding me?" The disbelief in her voice drew a faint smile from him. "No, serious." The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of rain against the window. Olivia crossed her arms, locking eyes with him. "Why me? There are hundreds of women out there." Logan drew in a slow breath. "Because you're different. I can't explain it, but I need someone like you." There was a weight in his voice that left her without an immediate answer. For the first time, the millionaire seemed vulnerable, and it disarmed her. After a long pause, Olivia finally replied, "I'll do it, but on one condition: you don't treat me like a piece in your game. If we're going to pretend, then at least treat me with respect." Logan nodded, surprised by her courage. That unlikely deal, sealed in an ordinary cafe, would become the starting point of a story no one could have predicted. The night of the event was approaching, and Olivia stood before the mirror, nerves coursing through her. Grace, patient as a mother, adjusted the dress she had chosen for her. The blue fabric shimmered softly under the light, turning Olivia's simplicity into elegance. "I never thought I'd wear something like this," she murmured, her hands trembling. Grace gave a gentle smile. "Trust yourself. Tonight, everyone will see what I've always seen." Logan watched from a distance, his serious expression hiding the surprise he felt. He was used to dazzling women at lavish galas, but he hadn't expected to be struck like this. When Olivia descended the stairs, the silence between them spoke louder than words. "Are you ready?" he asked, trying to mask the admiration in his tone. She simply answered, "I've always been ready, Mr. Blackwood." But inside, her heart raced out of rhythm. The hall where the dinner was held was vast, lit by crystal chandeliers that cast golden reflections across the tables. Charles Mendoza greeted them with a calculated smile, standing beside his fiancée, Sophia, who radiated sophistication. "So, we finally meet Logan's famous companion," Sophia said with a touch of irony. Olivia held her gaze steadily and replied with poise, "It's an honor to be here." At her side, Logan realized this woman was not easily intimidated. Between toasts and strategic conversations, Olivia surprised everyone. She spoke with intelligence, asked the right questions, and even drew subtle laughter from Charles. Logan watched her in disbelief, realizing her presence went far beyond a rehearsed role. "Who are you, Olivia?" he wondered silently, his eyes following her as if trying to solve a riddle. For the first time in years, he felt out of place and at the same time, fascinated. At the end of the dinner, Sophia approached Olivia. "You don't seem to belong here, but somehow, you shine in it." Olivia smiled, unbothered by the provocation. Logan, silent, understood something within him had shifted that night. And while the guests raised their glasses, the lonely millionaire realized he wasn't standing next to a temporary partner, he was standing before a possibility that could transform his life. The days that followed brought unexpected meetings. Logan, once bound to a routine of reports and boardrooms, now carved out spaces in his schedule just to see Olivia. She joined him on discreet walks through the city, always avoiding cameras and curious eyes. In small corner cafes, with open books and half-empty cups, they began to discover each other. Time, once heavy, now seemed to pass too lightly. Olivia spoke of her simple life, of nights spent writing poems in old notebooks. Logan listened as if discovering something rare, every word of hers lighting up something in his chest. "You're the first person who's ever really paid attention," she admitted, eyes glistening. He answered softly, almost a whisper, "Maybe because you're the first person worth paying attention to." Through shared confidences, they discovered their love for books. Logan showed Olivia his private library, shelves stretching to the ceiling, filled with rare volumes. She wandered the aisles with wonder, running her fingers gently along the spines. "This feels like a secret world," she said, enchanted. Logan watched her, realizing that this place, once a lonely refuge, took on a new meaning in her hands. The silent nights were now filled with deep conversations. Logan found himself laughing again, something rare in his life. Olivia, in turn, felt safe by his side, even when the ghosts of her past threatened to resurface. There was still a gap between their worlds, his, built on wealth and power, and hers, shaped by simplicity, but that difference seemed to dissolve with every passing moment. And it was in that gentle, almost imperceptible rhythm that Logan began to truly open up. He spoke of the pain he carried, of the wound left by a love that had shattered him years before. Olivia, silent, simply held his hand. She didn't speak, but that gesture said more than words ever could. For the first time in a long time, Logan didn't just feel understood, he felt whole. The gala hall glowed with golden lights, mirrored by tall glass panels that gave the space an almost celestial air. Logan and Olivia danced slowly at the center, surrounded by curious glances and hushed whispers. The soft music carried the moment, but his eyes were fixed only on her. "You've changed my life, Olivia," he murmured, his voice trembling. She smiled, surprised by his sincerity, sensing that something important was about to happen. In the middle of the dance, Logan suddenly stopped. The orchestra seemed to fade, as if the entire world had gone silent. He knelt before her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. A hush swept across the room. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his eyes filled with tears. Olivia covered her mouth, overwhelmed, as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Yes," she cried, her voice shaking, hardly believing it was real. The hall erupted in applause, but for them only that moment existed. Logan rose and pulled her into a tight embrace, as though he would never let her go again. It was more than a proposal, it was a complete surrender. A man finally letting all his walls come down. A few days later, an intimate dinner sealed their promise. With candles glowing and glasses of wine on the table, Olivia looked at Logan as if gazing at a miracle. "I never thought I'd find someone like this," she confessed. He simply held her hand and replied, "Neither did I. But I found you." Their love, unexpected and fierce, was proof that destiny had plans they never could have imagined. The wedding took place in secret, far from the spotlight. Only close friends and Grace were present. Olivia's simple veil contrasted with the grandeur of the moment, but it was precisely that simplicity that made it feel even more real. And when they exchanged vows, there was no doubt. This wasn't a marriage of convenience. It was the beginning of a new life, where every promise carried the weight of eternity. The house was no longer silent. Children's laughter echoed through the halls, filling every corner with a joy Logan had never dreamed of feeling. Olivia, now a published author, walked across the room holding the manuscript of her first book. Logan watched her from afar, proud, as though every page was also part of his own triumph. "You did it, Olivia," he said, gently touching her shoulder. She smiled, eyes shining with emotion. In the garden, a little girl ran barefoot across the grass. Lily, the couple's daughter, carried her mother's sweetness in her eyes and her father's determination in her smile. Logan lifted her into his arms, and for a moment, the weight of his old loneliness seemed as if it had never existed. "Daddy, fly with me," she shouted between bursts of laughter, and for the first time, laughing with his whole heart, he spun her in the air, as though the world had finally found its balance. Life was different now. The Manhattan office still thrived with million-dollar deals, but Logan no longer lost himself in it. Meetings ended earlier, trips were planned as a family, and nights were devoted to bedtime stories. Olivia, with her gentle voice, read tales to Lily while Logan sat beside them, simply watching. The man who had once been a prisoner of silence was now part of a symphony of life. Grace, always by their side, watched it all with discreet tears in her eyes. "I never thought I'd see you like this," she confessed one evening. Logan only smiled. "Neither did I." That house, once cold and empty, now pulsed with warmth. The luxury remained, but it no longer defined their lives. What defined them was the love that bound them, simple and true. And so Gunn Blackwood, the magnate who once lived surrounded by shadows, found the redemption he had never dared to dream of. The man who once fled from feelings now walked hand in hand with them. In every laugh of Lily's, in every page Olivia wrote, there was proof that even the coldest hearts can be reborn when they find unexpected love. In the end, Logan discovered that the greatest wealth wasn't in money, but in the love that turned his solitude into life. Olivia showed him that kindness always wins, and that even the coldest hearts can be reborn. And you? Have you ever wondered if you might be letting slip the love that could change everything? If this story touched you, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep following these stories of love that inspire and transform.